All right, another weekly video, and this one's, well, same squeaky chair. We're still in business. Squeaky chair radio's in the house. All right, so another controversy. Like a lot of these videos are coming out as like controversial topics and stuff like that. But to tell you the truth, it's just a lot of stuff that I hear about or see or talk to people, and I say to myself, that just doesn't seem right. It seems like common sense would prevail, and that just wouldn't be a thing, and I don't really understand that. So here's another topic that I really just I don't get. I mean, I understand the basic concept of it, and all that other stuff, but it's basically on words. That's basically what it's going to be about, and you'll get the gist of what I'm talking about in 2 seconds after I start talking. So the other day, I'm talking to a friend of mine, and he's telling me about a story of something he was doing, right? So he's telling me about this guy got in an argument, blah, 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 and this one says that, and that one says that. They're at a restaurant. Restaurant people come over, and the guy says, the guy wound up fighting him because he called him a K word, right? So it goes on with the story, whatever. And I'm like, the K word? What's the K word? And he's like, well, I'm like, no. I honestly, truly have no idea what the K word is. And he said, for Jewish people. I'm like, all right. Now, all right. I understand the word that you're talking about. It's an insulting word or whatever. But why didn't you just say that? And he said, well, because you're not supposed to say that. I said, well, you're not saying it. You're not like insulting somebody in saying it. Like you're telling a story, and it's about something that somebody else said. So your intent of the word isn't to cause harm or cause disrespect or any of the other stuff. Was it saying it in context? No, it's saying it out of context. You're using it out of context, right? I don't know. I think you're using it out of context. So you're not actually using the word. You're using the word. That's the point. The point is when did it become a time where we couldn't use words out of context, even when we didn't mean them as insults to people, right? So, you hear people all the time say the N-word, right? Not actually say the word, but say out of context the N-word. Now, what I'll tell you is that 90% of the population, there's those 10% of lunatics and racist idiots that use a lot of things that they shouldn't say, that say it in an angry and disrespectful manner, right? But there's a lot of people where that word is not even in their vocabulary, right? But when you're telling a story and you're using it as a third person and saying that, and then this guy came out and said, boom, it shouldn't be a thing where you feel like the English language is no longer allowed to be used by you because somebody might get offended on something that you're saying that is not in context with the word that you're saying. Do you understand? Does that make any sense? Like, I should be able to say whatever I want. And if I'm trying to insult you, then I'll use insulting words. And I'll use whatever I want because no part of the English language is taken away from me. I don't care. I'll use whatever I want. And if I disrespect you because I meant to disrespect you, then we'll handle that when that time comes. And I have no problem with that either. But the point I'm trying to make is that we have to have an ability to decipher when somebody is talking and trying to be disrespectful and when people are just talking and using words, right? Is there ever a time where these words should be used? Well, yeah. I don't know what they all are, but there's what do you got? You got the B word that is very disrespectful to call women, but is also the name of a female dog. You know what I mean? Well, you have the C word, the C word for woman. Like that one should never be used unless you're trying to really disrespect a woman. If you're trying to say something to where it makes her head blow off and that she is like, oh my God, I now fully 100% have your attention and I'm going to kill you, then of course you could use that word, right? You can't of course use that word. You should never use it, but it should never be disallowed from your vocabulary. You should have the right and the ability to say whatever you want, but you better be ready to face those consequences. You better be ready. You better know what you're saying, and you better be, guard your grill and knuckle up, because, you use some of these words, and it could have physical ramifications. But it shouldn't have physical ramifications if you're having a discussion and you're saying to somebody about something else that happened or something you saw on the show or whatever. It seems goofy to say, yeah, so we're watching a show and then all of a sudden out of nowhere he calls her the C word. Like, that's not even part of the English language. Just come out and say the word. That's what she said. I didn't say it. I'm not being disrespectful. I'm not trying to be vulgar. I'm just relaying the story on something else that was said. You know. Now there's you have the N word, you have the K word, you have the B word, you have the C word, you have the S word for Hispanic people. You have now it's the M word for small people. Well, no, you can't dwarf for dwarf people. No, that's not right. It's small people, right? Dwarf. I don't know. It's not dwarf. I know that. Oh, no, I don't know that. It might be dwarf. I don't think it's small, little people, for little people, right? So you can't call them the M word, right? Which never looked up the word, so I don't really know what that one means, which I probably should, because it might mean something else. But there are words that I thought meant other things. The R word, right? For mentally challenged or mentally handicapped people. See, everything changes so much that I have a hard time keeping up with it. So I think it used to be mentally handicapped, right? And then that was disrespectful because they're not handicapped, which I don't know how the word handicap became disrespectful, but it wasn't then mentally handicapped. Now they're just mentally challenged. So now you can't say that, right? So I thought in a conversation one time, I thought that the R word also meant like slow or slow or something like that. Like it's being slowed down by something. So you could use the R word in reference to people, but like the proper term of the word was like if something isn't mechanically working right. Like let's say you're saying like, all right, you have these three engines. They all pump at 100 gigawatts per minute. 100 gigawatts, 100 gigawatts, and that one's only 80 gigawatts. That one's the R word compared to the other two. So you'd say, oh, that engine's the R word. You know what I mean? See what I'm doing now? I'm using all of these words without using these words just to emphasize on how ridiculous it sounds, right? So, but I actually think that I learned that it's not the same word. It's like one is like with a D and one's with a T or whatever it is, right? So I decided I was going to look up that word because that was a word that I was like, you know what? I actually don't know what that word means. So in Webster's dictionary, the R word means slow or limited in intellectual or emotional development. I couldn't even read my own writing there for a minute. Slow or limited in intellectual or emotional development. It also means less advanced in mental, physical, or social development than usual for one's age. Now, that doesn't sound like it sounds like it's pretty spot on. It doesn't sound disrespectful or whatever, but I think that since people were calling each other that word as an insult, it all of a sudden became like it was a bad word. You couldn't say it anymore. Now, the F word, see, not the F word you're thinking about, the F word for gay people or homosexual people, whatever it is now, gay people, homosexual people, whatever, that F word, man, I grew up on that F word. I mean, everybody was that F word. Like, oh, look at this guy. What an F word. You know what I mean? Like, like it. And to tell you the truth, I don't even know what that actually means either. You know what I mean? It was just a word. It's just something that people said. It didn't seem like it was an insulting thing. It seems like it's an insulting thing when you say it to a gay person, but doesn't seem like it's insulting to everybody else. I don't really get it. But I can understand that there are words that could be used to be disrespectful to people and to make people angry. I get it. You know what I mean? But if you're going to use those words, like Papa John, right? Papa John's Pizza or whatever. From what I understand, he was on a conference call and he was relaying a story, and in the story he used the N-word, But he didn't use the story as it was his vocabulary and his context. He used it as the story that he was describing. And the guy who started the company, Papa John himself got fired from his own company that he owned and started and built and created. And the board of directors said, like, no, you can't do that. So we're gonna, and I guess I don't know if he resigned or they fired him, they drug him out of the building, what they did. But Papa John went home, and Papa John is now sitting on his couch wondering where it all went wrong for his. I think he still owns like 50% of the company or something, but he's no longer the spokesman. He's no longer on the board. He's no longer Papa John. He's just John now. Like, he's at home. He's got no pizza. He's got no nothing. He just, all because he used the word, from what I understand, out of context. You know what I mean? Everybody that knows the guy said, like, oh no, he would never, and he's not that kind of guy, and blah blah blah, and this, that, and the other thing. You know what I mean? So I don't know the whole story. All I know is that it was based on just the word. The guy didn't, physically hurt anyone. The guy didn't, ruin anybody's life. The guy didn't do anything. The guy that, let's say that he used the word and he used it in anger and he used it to disrespect somebody. Even if he did that, there's consequences to that. But you lose your entire empire over one word, one single word, when everything else in your life doesn't say that you've been a consistent user of the word, a consistent just a-hole to there's another one, an a-hole, a consistent a-hole to everybody that you've ever come across. Like, holy smokes, like that is something else, over one word. So words are all continually changing. There's words that dumbass, knucklehead, cornball. There's these words that I don't even know what any of them mean, but I use them, I guess, in an insulting manner. I use them to let somebody know, like, oh, stop being a dumbass, goddamn knucklehead, you freaking cornball, But I'm not saying that the person's an actual physical bowl of corn. You know what I mean? Like, I don't even know if that's a thing. I don't even know where that word started. I don't know if you would say to somebody like, dude, you're a cornball. Like, back in the 1800s, a bowl of corn used to mean that you were somebody who was less intelligent than somebody else. Or that meant that you were a joker, or meant whatever. Like, so these words, they have meaning, I guess, but not meaning in the way that people use them in the English language. So can't you have different words? You can hear my dog snoring over the microphone. What a cornball. All right, anyway, so so you have these words that you use and that have dual meanings and all that other stuff, right? Should some of these words never be used? Yes. But they should never be taken from your vocabulary. You should make the decision on what you're going to say and what you're not going to say. And the people that get offended by words that are being used should have the ability to know when something's being used in context or something that's not being used in context. Something that's being used as disrespectful. Listen, if someone came up to me and said, "You're the nice motherfucker," like, and just use regular words, I would still be pissed off because of the way they're carrying this up. They're making me angry. They're obviously mad or pissed off at me, and we're gonna have some words, or we're gonna have to throw these things or something, because obviously we got a problem. It doesn't make a difference on what words you're using when you're doing that. If you're disrespecting me, we're gonna do that. We're gonna make things happen. We're gonna start moving some furniture. You know what I mean? So the words that are being used, if you're being the nicest person in the world and using words like this, not in a disrespectful way, then I should have enough intelligence to say, like, hey, that's kind of a disrespectful word. I wouldn't use that in the context you're using it, or whatever. Or you just don't use the word, the C word. You just don't use the word. The N word, you just don't use the word. You just don't use these words, but you don't use them in the way where you mean harm. You mean disrespect, or you mean, to label people or any of that stuff. If you're looking to be disrespectful, have at it. You know what I mean? If you're looking to tell a story and you're using it out of context or whatever, then that shouldn't be a problem. That shouldn't be a problem. Use the words you want to use. I'm going to use the words I want to use. And if somebody's sitting on the table across from me and they hear me telling a story about some dumbass that was doing something that they shouldn't have been doing, acting like a cornball and goddamn knucklehead, and I start using these words in context and they have a problem with that, I don't feel that that's a me problem. I feel like that's a them problem. You got that problem. I don't have that problem. I'm telling the story. I'm not directing my words and angers towards somebody. I'm just trying to get a point across to somebody without coming across with like a third grade, language education by saying, so this guy, man, you should have seen these two arguing. So he calls her the C word. She turns around, calls him the B word. And then, because he's a black guy, she starts throwing out the N word. And then she was Jewish, so the K word came out, and then the S word, and then the M word, and then the R word. And then, before you know it, everyone was calling each other the F word. And you're like, why are we doing that? We're better than that. Use your words, say what you got to say, mean what you have to say, and let the chips fall where they may. Don't be disrespectful of people. Be respectful. But at the same time, the English language is a blessing. It is a great way to communicate and all that other stuff. And at no time should anyone take that ability away from you. Nobody should take your words away from you. Because I can guarantee, ain't nobody ever going to take my words from me.